My sister-in-law keeps insisting I babysit her twin toddlers every day, despite my exhausting 50-hour work week and limited free time. I, 23 female, have an older brother, Mike, 28 male, and he got married around 4 years ago to Emma, 27. They also have twin toddlers, age 3 male. I'm close to my brother, but I'm not really close to my sister-in-law because while I had attempted to get to know her better when Mike had introduced her to me, she just never bothered to show any interest in getting acquainted. Even after they got married and had kids, she'd never been particularly enthusiastic when it comes to our family, which is fine by me. But then she shouldn't expect us to constantly be at her beck and call either. That's when it becomes unfair. But for some reason she does expect help from me. When she just had kids, she would call me up and tell me to go grocery shopping for her as well since she was stuck at home with the kids and Mike was too tired after work to do anything. I did it the first few times for Mike's sake, but then she started adding more errands so I had to say no. In more recent times, she started dropping their twins off at my house every single day so that I could babysit them while she went out about her day. I did it for the first 3 days, but on the 4th day, I told her that I needed to work and I couldn't handle both. But she dismissed it, saying that this was just practice for when I'd have kids of my own, and I'll be fine. Besides, I'm staying at home anyway, so it shouldn't be much of a big deal. So yeah, I do work from home, that part is true, but that's still work. And I don't know why it should mean that I'm available to babysit your kids when I'm clearly still working. It's called work from home for a reason. Also, it's a proper 9 to -5 job, and even though working remotely makes it more comfortable, I still have to work just as hard as anyone working in an office. So I really can't afford to keep an eye on 2 kids while working. I even told her so on the first day itself, but she told me that she absolutely had to go visit her mom who was sick. My brother didn't like the idea of babysitters, and so wouldn't trust the kids with anyone apart from me, so she had no other option, and she promised that she'd be gone only for a few hours at most, so I agreed to it. But then she was gone for almost 6 hours, and when she finally came back, I told her that this was me doing her a favor just once. But the next time she'd either have to look for a babysitter or get my brother to work from home and watch over his kids instead because I won't be able to do both things at once. So then she started lecturing me about how I'm their aunt and I should readily offer to take care of them whenever they need someone, since that's what family is there for anyway. She told me that her mom's really sick and her brother is out of state right now and won't be coming home for another 2 days, so she needs me to help her out with the kids since I'm the only one Mike would be okay with. She also said that my brother is working really hard for a promotion, so it would be wrong to disturb him in any way at a time like this. So this arrangement needs to stay between us. And eventually, she wore me down and I agreed. So for the next 2 days, I watched the kids and also did my work, which was exhausting, while Emma took her own sweet time coming back to pick the kids up. Anyway, on the 4th day, I was finally really excited to have the day to myself since that was the day that Emma's brother was scheduled to come back home and she wouldn't have to go take care of her mother since her brother would be there for her. But then again, she showed up right on time and dropped her kids off saying that she needed to run some errands and she'd be back in a jiffy. Now I knew that in a jiffy meant 2 hours at the least, and I tried to argue with her, but she was in such a hurry that she didn't even listen. She just walks in, sat her kids down on the couch, and rushed back out to her car without bothering to wait for me to get a word in. I was furious, so I texted her saying that for someone who works 50 hours a week, taking up an additional task of being a free babysitter wasn't very easy and the least she could do was at least be honest with me. Once again, she started telling me about how I owed this to her and Mike since we were family, and I pretty much lost it at that point. So I took a couple of screenshots of the text and sent them to my brother along with pictures of his kids in my house. I also sent him a detailed explanation of what had been happening for the past few days and how his wife had been treating me like daycare service and that this needed to stop. I had to work as well, and I couldn't deal with this every day. Don't get me wrong, I love my nephews to bits and think they're perfect, but then kids are always a handful, and after all, I'm not their mother. And I didn't sign up for this, so it seems a bit unfair to just dump the kids on me and leave. I texted him all of this and just vented to him about Emma and her behavior. After around 15 minutes, Mike texted me back saying that he was sorry about all of this and he was on his way now to pick his kids up. I started feeling a little guilty then, since Emma had told me beforehand that he was stressed about work, and this must have added to it as well. So I tried to tell him that I could handle it today, but he insisted on coming to take them back. When he showed up, he looked really upset and didn't speak much. He thanked me once again for being so patient and understanding about this whole situation and apologized for the inconvenience, then left. I felt really bad back then, and I still do since I could see the disappointment on his face. I thought it was because of me and my refusal to babysit my nephews. But 3 days later I found out from my parents that Mike had filed for divorce from Emma and had also demanded full custody of his kids, while Emma would only get visitation rights. My parents didn't know the real reason either, since they'd found out from Emma's parents, who'd called them up devastated to inform them about what was happening between their kids. Immediately, I called Mike up to ask what this was all about, since he'd always been head over heels with Emma, so this was strange. I went over to his place to talk to him since Emma had left for the day. After he'd taken his kids back home with him from my house, they'd had a huge argument that evening itself. And that was what had eventually led to her leaving the house and him filing for divorce the next morning itself. Apparently, this had been going on for a while, where she would take their kids and dump them on some unsuspecting relative and then go about her own day. Earlier, it had been Emma's third cousin who lived a few blocks away from them, but then she moved away. She hadn't even found out about it until after she'd moved away, because Emma had never bothered to tell him. It was only because her cousin had made some joke about how Emma would have to look for another babysitter now that Mike found out about what she'd been up to. They'd gotten into a huge fight about that, since Mike had never agreed to this and Emma was a stay-at-home mom, so the least she could do for her kids was to live up to it. Or at least send them to a daycare or get a proper babysitter to care for them if she wanted to be out. But she couldn't just dump them onto other people, especially people who he didn't know that well. She argued that she wasn't ready to send the kids to daycare just yet, and full-time nannies weren't trustable enough. But some random distant cousin of hers whom she'd only met twice or thrice was a better bet somehow. He'd explained to her that she couldn't eat her cake and have it too, so she'd have to pick one. Either she could stay at home with the kids and watch them herself, or the other two options he'd mentioned earlier. But she wasn't ready for that. So they agreed that the next few weeks she'd stay at home with the kids, and if she needed to go out, then she could tell him to come back home, and he'd be with the kids himself. But like we all know, that's not what happened. And just a few weeks after that, she dumped her kids onto me and went out with her friends. Yeah, her mom wasn't sick at all. One of her friends is getting married, so she's been spending every day with her while I take care of her toddlers. I was shocked and infuriated when I realized that she'd just been taking advantage of my willingness to help my brother out, and almost had half a mind to call her up and tell her what an awful person she was, but refrained from it somehow. Anyway, Mike told me that the day I called him up to tell him that she dropped the kids off at mine, he lost it, since she was doing exactly what she'd promised she wouldn't do. This time, while they were arguing, she told him that it was all right, since he'd said that he didn't want someone he didn't know babysitting their kids, but he knew me and trusted me, so she didn't know what the big deal was. The poor guy had to dumb it down for her to realize that just because I was his sister didn't mean that I was available and willing to watch his kids, especially since I have a full-time job alongside this as well, which her cousin didn't. She was a stay-at-home spouse and didn't have kids of her own, so she could afford to watch ours, but she wasn't particularly close to neither Mike nor even Emma, so I really don't know why she trusted her with her children. During their last fight, Mike had said something along the lines of her not being interested in being a mother at all, and Emma had snapped at him and said that no, she really wasn't. She told him that if she'd known that having kids would mean putting an end to having any sort of fun together, then she would never have had them, and then she stormed out. That had been enough for Mike to file for divorce and full custody, since she'd made it pretty clear that she didn't want to be a mom anymore. I was really shocked, since even though I'd always known that Emma was never really serious about life, I thought that marriage and kids would change that and she'd become a bit more responsible. But clearly that hadn't happened, and my brother and their kids unfortunately got caught up in all of it. He was pretty torn up about this whole divorce thing. And on top of that, she wasn't even willing to give up custody of the kids despite what she'd said. She hadn't responded to the divorce notice yet, but she was really angry, and his in-laws had been harassing him all day. I consoled him for a bit and told him it would all work out eventually, after which I left feeling considerably sadder about Mike. Once I got home, my parents called me again and asked me if I'd been able to find out anything since Mike hadn't answered any of their calls. So I told them that they'd have to speak to Mike himself, since I didn't know if it was my place to share his reasons. But they kept bugging me about it, so I ended up telling them anyway just to get them off my back. Once I was done, my parents did a 480 and started blaming me for how the situation had turned out, because they believed that had I just quietly stayed home with the kids that day instead of informing Mike, then maybe this wouldn't have happened at all. I couldn't believe that they were accusing me of being the reason behind their divorce and not Emma's carelessness, and I ended up getting into a fight with my parents over that, but they just weren't ready to listen. They think that I should have fought things through before involving my brother, and want me to apologize to Emma and her family for causing so much trouble, so that they do something to stop the split as if it was Emma's decision in the first place. I know exactly why they're doing this as well. It's because my parents are close friends with Emma's parents and don't want to lose the friendship, since Emma's parents are the rich and influential type of people that my parents would love to associate with. They were thrilled when Mike brought Emma home for the first time, since if it worked out, it would eventually mean an invitation to the pretentious people's parties. But the fact that they were so concerned about appearances and their relationships with other people, that they were even willing to throw their own kids under the bus, just didn't sit right with me and made me lose all respect for them instantly. I hung up on them and haven't spoken to them ever since, but they just keep badgering me and blaming me through text. I don't even dare to block them since I still love my parents, even though I don't like them as people anymore. I can't even bother Mike with any of this, even though he's the person I'd usually go to under these circumstances, but given everything that he's going through at the moment, I don't think that's a good idea. So now here I am, AITA for complaining to my brother because my sister-in-law kept pressuring me to babysit her kids, even though I work 50 hours a week. Update 1. 1 week has passed, and Mike has been really caught up in the legal proceedings. Emma has decided not to contest the divorce, but is still unwilling to give up custody and wants joint custody of the kids, which still doesn't make any sense to me because I hardly think she's changed her mind about being a mom overnight. Here's the thing about Emma. I guess this might explain her behavior. She's the only daughter of filthy rich parents, and unfortunately she grew up to be a really spoiled brat. I'm not implying that all kids with rich parents are brats, but she sure is. My parents have known her since we were kids, since our mothers went to the same college, and so they'd sometimes see each other at reunions and stuff. They were friends, but not particularly close. That changed only after Mike began dating Emma. She's one of those people who refuse to change with the times and continue to act like she was a high school girl with no responsibilities well into adulthood and even motherhood. She just decided not to grow up, and that's probably a big reason as to why I just cannot bring myself to like her. I'll never know what exactly Mike saw in her, but at least he has the good sense to leave now, since it's become really clear that she's not going to put her own children above having a fun time, like she herself so eloquently says. And that's a dangerous mindset for a parent. He's just lucky that her cousin was a normal, stable human being who didn't harm the kids, and I, despite my work, agreed to take care of them. Or she might have dumped them onto someone else, who she barely even knew, just because she wasn't ready for daycares and nannies yet. Honestly, nothing she says or does has ever made any sense to me, and I just think she's a ridiculously stupid woman. I'm pretty sure the only reason that she's even fighting for the custody of her children is on the insistence of her parents, who might still want to see their grandkids. As for my own parents, they haven't spoken to me yet either, since I made it very clear a couple of days back that there was no way in hell that I was going to apologize to either Emma or her parents, since I don't think I've done anything wrong. So if they're going to cut me off for doing the right thing and helping my brother protect his kids from a careless mom, then I guess that speaks volumes about how my parents are rather than me. Update 2. I spoke to my brother today, finally, after almost 2 weeks. We did keep in touch in the middle, but it was just rushed small talk and updates on the custody battle. It's been going pretty all right for him so far, and I'm happy about that, but his in-laws, Emma's parents, have started bothering me now. I'm pretty sure that my own parents gave them my contact info and address, which is why Emma's mother dropped by unannounced last night. She told me that I was the only person at this point who could convince my brother to agree to a joint agreement, and I was even ready to consider her request since she seemed earnest and desperate. But then she said something so annoyingly shallow that I couldn't take her seriously anymore. She told me that she, her husband, and Emma most of all, were really distressed about what was going on. The divorce was bad enough in itself, but losing custody of her kids would just shatter Emma. I expected her to say that it would be a real blow to her as a mother, but she went on to tell me that they were already terrified of becoming the talk of the town if Emma did end up losing custody of her kids, which is why I needed to step in and do something to prevent it from happening. I was shocked that these people were more worried about people gossiping about them than they were about their own flesh and blood. That really was the limit for me. I told her that I'd talk to my brother about it, but obviously I had no intention of doing so, and said it only so that she'd go away and leave me alone. This morning I went over to Mike's house and told him what his mother-in-law had said to me last night. He didn't even seem surprised, just upset that even now Emma didn't seem to care about her own children, but more about what her friends would think if she lost custody of them. I guess now it adds up to why she's been fighting so hard for joint custody. It's not because she suddenly discovered how much she loves being a mother or anything of the sort, but only because she doesn't want to come off as an irresponsible or unstable woman who's not fit to be a mother who lost custody of her kids. This is all just a last-ditch attempt to save her reputation and nothing else, which is disheartening to say the least. The twins have been staying with Mike so far, and sometimes he asks me to babysit, which I do gladly when I'm available. And if I'm not, he asks one of his trusted friends whom he's known for years, and is willing to help out to look after them since he hasn't had the time to look into a daycare or a nanny yet. Once the custody arrangement is finalized, I guess he'll get to it. I'm hopeful that he'll get full custody, and with any luck it'll happen soon, because truth be told, Emma really doesn't deserve to be a mother. She wasn't ready for it back when she had them, and she's still not ready now. Maybe she will be someday, but that doesn't seem likely to happen anytime soon, at least not as long as she's living with her shallow parents. No wonder she turned out to be this way. The superficial apple doesn't fall far from the superficial tree after all. But I'm one to talk given my current relationship with my own parents. They haven't talked to me, and I don't think they will. They've reached out to Mike several times, though he hasn't responded to them, and has been really cut and businesslike with them because of the way they've been treating me. He even refused to let them come see the Toddlers a couple of days ago, and gave them an ultimatum saying that they could either apologize to me and make amends, or they could pretend they had no kids at all and live a drama-free life. They got into an argument, and now my parents aren't speaking to either of us, which doesn't affect either of us anymore. We are much too busy with our own lives, and they've proved time and again that their loyalties lie not with their own kids but with Emma's parents. So they've made their choice, and we've made peace with their choice. I'm not going to try and change their mind because there's just no point. When Emma eventually loses custody of her kids and her parents cut ties with my parents, maybe then they'll realize what a mess they've made of things. But it'll be too late then. For now, they can keep believing that they're somehow in the right. Here, update 3. Hey there, it's been almost 7 months since the last update, and as of today, Mike finally has full custody of his twins. He finally won the legal battle 2 months ago, and his divorce came through last week as well, so he's living the good life now. He's finally free of Emma, and I couldn't be happier for him. And also, just as I'd predicted, Emma's parents cut my parents off as soon as she lost the custody battle. But at least my parents were dignified enough to not come running back to us immediately. Instead, they resorted to more sly, manipulative means, which is just so classic. We only found out about it because my aunt called me up to tell me about how upset my mother was that Mike and I weren't speaking to her, and neither were Emma's parents returning her calls. We knew it was just an attempt by my mom to make us feel bad for her and get back in touch with her, but it wasn't going to work. If my parents want us back in their life, then they're going to have to do it the right way and apologize to us first, or else we're better off without them anyway. Mike is happy with his life now, and so am I.